This is the Sourceseeker Hour online. The Sourceseeker Hour, this is our 40th episode. We started in the studio, but we transferred to online so that we can have a larger reach. We have one of our guests from Florida today. How you doing, Miss Tiffany? Thank you very much. And this subject, assisted living, is a very important subject during the pandemic and at other times. And this is the Sourceseeker Hour. I'm your host, Baruti Carl Alexander, and I thank everybody for joining us today on the Sourceseeker Hour. And we look forward to a great show with great information. And I'm going to go around the table and ask everybody to introduce themselves. Miss Tiffany, please introduce yourself from Jacksonville, Florida.
That's right. Hi, everybody. My name is Tiffany Hill Allen, and I do reside in Jacksonville, Florida. I have been in assisted living for the last 9 years, working for the largest senior living provider in actually the world, and really moved up through there and became a regional sales marketing director, overseeing up to 15 communities with my work. And I love my peeps. I call them my peeps. Anyone who's over 65, you're my peeps. And so I'm very passionate about senior living and very passionate about advocating for the aging population.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Let's move to Miss Diane. How are you doing, ma'am? Can you introduce yourself?
I'm well. My name is Diana Johnson. I'm here in Houston, Texas. I don't do senior assisted living. I do more of supportive transitional work for teenagers with CPS. And so I'm not sure where we fit in the scope of this conversation. But I'll be on for a few minutes, but I'm going to have to chime out in just a minute. But I'll be happy to just gather any information and give any input where it may be appropriate.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for your input, or whatever you can share. We appreciate it. Thank you very much. Miss Alma, can you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. My name is Alma Banks Brown. I'm with Little Audrey Safe Place Foundation, where I assist the aged out population of the foster care system who's seeking a post-secondary education. I also have our own Lifeline Independent Living, which also houses seniors. This is my 30th year with Little Audrey Safe Place and my 3rd year with Lifeline Independent Living.
Thank you very much. We appreciate you joining us today, participating, and sharing your information. Dr. Vihan, go ahead and let people know who you are. We have somebody else joining us right now, and as they're joining us, go ahead and introduce yourself, sir.
Okay, my name is Vihan McReynolds. I operate a program called Tour de Hood. Basically, we get people out exercising to keep them healthy throughout their life. So we do basically bicycles, and that's transportation to and from your assisted living or wherever you want to go.
Thank you very much. We have someone else joining us. They're fixing their login information and so forth. So we're going to go ahead and get started and talk about assisted living. You all have mentioned different types of assisted living. There are seniors, then there are, my career has been worked with special education, students with disabilities. And that is a type, my understanding of assisted living also, that they can be in a home. And I've heard that veterans, even prisoners, there are different types of assisted living situations. And those are the things that we wish to talk about, the different types of assisted living situations, and then some of the technical things that go into making those environments safe, and some of the adjustments that had to be made during the pandemic. Hi, Miss Barnes. Cassandra, how are you doing?
I am great. How are you?
Oh, thank you. Thank you for joining us. I'm doing pretty good. Thank you for joining us. Everyone has shared and introduced themselves and shared about their relationship in assisted living. Can you go ahead and introduce yourself for us?
Okay, my name is Cassandra Barnes. I'm a registered nurse. I also hold a master's degree in professional counseling or psychotherapy. I've been a nurse for over 30 years with almost every aspect of nursing and an extensive background in mental health management as well. So I'm pleased to be a part of the conversation tonight.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it very much. And we're talking about the different aspects of assisted living. I was talking with Miss Tiffany earlier and sharing some of my goals and aspirations. I'm about to be a retired teacher. And of course, as I said, my background is special education. So I have had some background working with people with disabilities, but assisted living is much broader than that. It encompasses, as I was mentioning, veterans. You can have prisoners. You can have seniors. I think that's one of the most dominant areas of assisted living. Seniors. Even they have homes for people with chemical dependency, people that have difficulty in that. If I am incorrect, because I'm still learning, if I'm incorrect, Ms. Tiffany, can you share some of the different types of assisted living and share and give us some information on that?
Sure. So in my experience, I deal with more of the aging population, which if you look up living in Google, that's what comes up mostly. It's going to be either independent living, which I think I'm trying to remember which one, but one of you guys have worked in independent living for the last 3 years, right? And so that is the gateway kind of into senior living. So coming from home and going into independent living. From independent living, people stay there as long as they can and getting sometimes supportive assistance through home health services for as long as they can. But when it gets to a certain point where the cost, benefit, and the need is greater, then they go into what they call assisted living, where they're getting more of their activities of daily living taken care of, including medication management and some of those other things. And then there's memory care. And memory care is a type of assisted living that happens for people who suffer from various dementia-related diseases. When you're talking about, from what I understand, and I'm not the expert on this, but with people with disabilities, like you're talking about, or supportive home, usually, at least in the state of Florida, they're listed as a group home, which has sometimes different licensing than assisted living, because even in the states where the regulatory agency is, when they're talking about assisted living, typically they're talking about seniors that I'm aware of, but that's in the states that I have served.
And you're in Florida. You mentioned that there are different rules across the board according to the state, and we'll get into those aspects a little bit more. Ms. Alma, what are the different aspects of assisted living that you have seen, and some of the things that you've seen in the areas where you work?
So the different areas of assisted living that I work with, there are foster kids that have aged out of foster care. They are disabled. Some of them are disabled. A lot of them are in care on psychotropic meds. So when they exit the system, usually they're still on psychotropic meds, or they begin to self-medicate. So those, the youth that we work with, if they're self-medicating, then we recommend them to a recovery program. They still have a place with us, but I mainly work with the youth who have aged out and are seeking a post-secondary education. Some of them can live independently, some of them cannot. In terms of Lifeline independent living, those are seniors that work, and please forgive my dog in the background. I keep reviewing you guys. The seniors who can live independently on medication, whose illnesses are controlled by medication. We provide their transportation to and from rehab. We provide their assistance with giving them food, making sure they have their proper nutrition. We have, we're assisting them with living independent. And those that can live independent without our assistance, we generally don't house those. So that's what we do.
So if I'm understanding, for instance, I work with special ed students of all different types from age 6 to 22. After 22, they have aged out. So are you saying that there's a facility that they can go to, maybe if their parents have the money or what have you, they can go to after they've aged out of the educational system, and then they can maybe live in a home if they have the resources?
Okay, so if I'm assuming you're asking about foster youth that have aged out.
When you say aged out, we say what age do they age out?
And you have another expert there who works with CPS, but 18 what is the normal aged out age, if you will.
Okay.
So those youth that have aged out of foster care, I know they can be emancipated a little bit earlier. And the youth that do not return to care or participate with extended care, if they're leaving the foster care system at the age of 18 and are seeking a post-secondary education. So I want to be clear with defining that. Those youth that have aged out of foster care who are seeking education after the age of 18, after high school, which is their post-secondary education, be it trading school, technical school, college, community college. We house those youth. We don't house any youth that have aged out of care that is not seeking to further their education. So if a person has aged out and there is a mental illness, and they can still perform or seek some form of education afterwards, they can live in our housing, yes.
Okay, I understand. Ms. Diane, can you share some of the areas that you have seen in assisted living and some of the experiences that you have gone through in assisted living? Ms. Diane, are you there?
Yes, I had a call trying to come through. I apologize for that. Yeah, I actually did a transitional housing also for women exiting the prison system and those with dual diagnosis with substance abuse and some mental health issues also. But for those kids, I actually deal with teenagers that are currently in the foster care system, but I do deal with those kids that age out. I deal with extended care kids also. Those are kids that are over 18 up until the age of 21. And so, and as the young lady was saying, excuse me, I forgot her name, but at 18, they can't age out of care without any more legal dealings. And then if they choose, this becomes a voluntary commitment from the child. If they choose to still stay in care, they can actually remain in care with a actual CPS worker assigned to them until they're 21. And so I am currently in the process of opening what's called an extended care program, which is called a SEAL. It's a supervised independent living program, which is still a part of the foster care system, but it's for those kids that have aged out 18 to 21 years of age. And so there's support for those. And so, and I guess having dealt on both ends, I've actually dealt with, again, the women that are adult women I actually ran a transitional program. So it dealt more with those that, I guess there was a type of assisted living. Our objective was to assist them in employment. I was a vendor with the DARS program, and assisted those ladies coming out with securing employment and actually being in a temporary setting of housing until they were able to move into more of a permanent area of living.
Thank you very much. This is an extensive area, so many different parts of it. You mentioned extended living, women dealing with substance abuse, There's so many different areas, and that's what we want to share with the community and talk about how it's being affected by what is happening at this time. Ms. Cassandra, can you share some of the experiences that you have seen along these areas?
Yes. Okay. I have a background as a part of my nursing career in mental health, in home health care, assisted living from a healthcare perspective. And this COVID-19 crisis has significantly, really impacted the way agencies, I was speaking to the director of nurses over the agency that I've contracted with to provide nursing services for them. And it has greatly impacted them in that they're not able to provide the care that they normally would, which they service people in their homes and service people that are actually in assisted living facilities, as the young lady mentioned earlier, facilities that are set up specifically for seniors, for disabled adults, where they can meet some of their needs, but they can't meet the majority of their needs. They may need a little assistance with bathing and housekeeping and feeding and chores like that. And so you have home health nurses that are able to come in and actually provide nursing care to this population of people. And so with this COVID crisis, a lot of these seniors and disabled people that they would normally serve are afraid to have them come in, because they don't want to contract this virus. And rightfully so, because they're already compromised. Their health care is compromised because they're in this facility anyway. So when you're dealing with assisted living in general, it's any entity that's providing a level of assistance to any individual, be it adult, be it a child, be it, that have to be an adult, any human being that is not able to fully meet their needs can fall under the guise of needing some services based on assisting them to live at their optimum place. And so it's great that you have such a wide variety of people here that can share from very different perspectives and very different backgrounds. Because as a nurse, when I hear the term assisted living, I'm generally thinking, one-dimensional, how that relates to us. But having, someone here from CPS, having someone here that's dealing with children in foster care, and someone here who's dealing from a exercise, a nutritional place, it's a very well-rounded panel, and I want to commend you on that. But in particular, but from my perspective, it's a great hit when we as nurses, though I'm not actually doing actual patient care anymore, I work from the corporate perspective, but nevertheless, we as nurses are not able to even go in and provide a lot of services that these people need based on this horrific virus that we're facing right now. So it's a conversation that needs to be had. And just like I was speaking with the director this morning in relation to this dialogue, because she said not only they not being able to provide services, they're losing a lot of money. So now their staff is not making money, because when you're dealing with, in these environments, a lot of people are working contract. Your physical therapists, your occupational therapists, your nursing assistants, these people, even when I was working in that environment as RN, I was working contract. So thank God I have a full-time job, so my income actually has not changed. But if I was still working in that environment, I would be in a major financial crisis right now. And so it's a conversation that needs to be had, because you have patients whose healthcare is unstable. They may be diabetic, they may be hypertensive or whatever, and you don't have a nurse that's there routinely monitoring this stuff and overseeing these things. You know, so now you have a patient at risk of heart attack or stroke. One of my old patients, because they still call me because I've given them that latitude, just call me this morning and yesterday. I got a friend of mine who's a physician to allow her to come to her office because she couldn't even get in touch with her cardiologist. Her blood pressure was 200 and something over 100. They had been taking messages and saying, we'll call you back since last Friday when she went to the emergency room. And thank God I have relationships with, and you know, Dr. Sabrina, who's been a guest on your show previously, she allowed her to come to her office to service this patient to get her blood pressure controlled until she could follow with her cardiologist. So it's a whole different dynamic as it relates to how we're providing health care and the availability of health care. Because a lot of our doctors' offices are closed, or they're only doing telemedicine. They're not even allowing patients to come into their offices. So it's a whole new, complete dynamic as it relates to providing health care during this crisis.
Yes, ma'am, I understand. I mean, across the board, it's really changed so much. Just as an individual trying to go to the doctor, that has changed.
Yeah.
You have to make an appointment, and some doctors are only doing it virtual. Mm-hmm. So I know in a close quarter, such as assisted living, where you have to work in close proximity with patients or whomever you're working with, it's caused a lot of tension. Yes. How is the tension across the board, Ms. Tiffany, in the assisted living environment? How has it really changed because of the COVID-19?
Tension or stress?
Say again?
I said tension or stress, which one you're talking about? So especially in the beginning, there was so much coming down at one time, and every day, sometimes multiple times a day, administrators would have to change their policies or write new policies. It was very, very stressful. And then on top of that, the stress of protecting your residents, protecting your staff. On top of that is dealing with family members who don't want to comply. And dealing with residents who don't understand, especially those who have more cognitive issues, not understanding why they can't see the person they've seen every day. It's a lot. It's a lot. I don't think people understand a lot of times that people talk about the nursing home component of it and not understanding the whole dynamic of how this has impacted assisted living and any senior living. So I say independent, when I think about senior living, I think about independent assisted and memory care. Right. So residents have at least majority, I know in Florida and some of the other states that I have overseen and I've been keeping up with, residents have been isolated in their apartments, which has caused a decline in their cognition, in their mental health with depression. Some of the most, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm trying to remember your name, the nurse, but when I first came into the industry, I did not realize how many seniors are on antidepressants. Yes. And so you have something like this come on, and that just exasperates it. You know, I always thought antidepressants were more for the younger people and stuff like that, but it is really predominant in this population. And so now you have people who can't have touch or feel, who already, a part of my conversation with my team is, these are people who are looking back. You know, most of the time in your life, you're looking forward, you're looking for milestones. These people sit all day and they look back. What did I do wrong? What could I have done better? Where are my friends who was with me, who's no longer with me? And so they're leaving, the whole idea is talking about the legacy they can leave while still living. But now they don't have anything or any outlet to live that legacy. So it's very difficult. It's difficult for everyone when inside the community. It's difficult for the nurses to protect each resident, and then all the reporting to the state, sometimes multiple times a day. It's just really difficult right now. But I look at
Florida,
the other side. Huh?
I was just going to say, in Florida, they have some communities that have been hit hard by COVID-19. And so we haven't been hit as hard in Texas as some of the other communities. So I'm sure that there's a little bit even more stress and a little bit even more tension going on.
Well, it's all over. I mean, I wouldn't just say Florida, New York. I've seen it in California. I've seen it in, I can look it up to see if, you know, in terms of per state, but from what I've seen, it's been overwhelming everywhere. Actually, in Florida, in assisted living, we haven't had an outbreak as bad as some of the other states. And I think that's because we have so many, so because we have so many seniors, soon as this came open or happened, people went on lockdown way before the state said to lock down. So our state didn't lock down, but best to believe these national companies and then the smaller ones followed. We were locked down early. So we did not have, as a state, a whole lot of outbreaks. We've had a few, mostly in the Miami area, but in my top of mind, it might have been only 2, where you see other states have had multiples, and it's been a really big issue. And I'm not defending Florida. I'm just saying, I think because we have so many, just in my company alone, when I first was a regional, we had 116 senior living communities just in the state of Florida. Wow. So, and I was in the top 12 markets for that company because I have 12 just within that one company just here in Jacksonville. So,
yes, ma'am.
So yeah, so I just think that it's all over.
Yes, ma'am. I understand. The pandemic has affected every part of life, every situation, psychologically and physically. So it's been a very difficult process. Dr. Vion, you were shaking your head about the stresses and the tensions.
I have a question more, because I took care of my 103-year-old aunt for a while, and we looked a lot for assisted living, but the cost was prohibitive. And so if here you are a senior, you're in your last years, how do you find a place where it's safe, that you can live with somebody supporting you? We had the nurses come in, we had the physical health come in, we had other people come in, just kind of talk, that sort of stuff. But once she got to the point to where she couldn't stay at home, then the only other option was the nursing home. And we've heard the stories about how COVID and the nursing home. I'm so glad she died. I don't know what to do. And that's a bad thing to say, but
that is a bad thing to say.
But let me tell you that knowing how the mental stress that she would have gone through while she was living, I am definitely glad that she is gone.
From Dr. Vion.
I understand.
Good. I'm glad somebody understands.
Yeah, I do.
And I love my aunt. Don't get me wrong. I really love my aunt. But the care that she could have gotten, and then I can no longer go to aid and assist her because I was going almost every day to the nursing home. But, she could have actually stayed in an assisted living if there was something that she could afford. But, we couldn't afford $8,000 a month, out of pocket. So anyway, so I'm asking that question. What is it for the normal poor person to get assistance? What can we do for that person?
Okay. Miss Alma, can you share what are some of the costs and what are some of the support assisted living, the government or some other entities, they help supplement or support what are some of the things that people can reach into or help them to support themselves to be able to stay in an assisted living environment?
Okay, I'm going to say, first of all, condolences to you and your aunt. And for me to share a personal story, my mom became very ill, and I refused to put her in an assisted living center. Of course, she has her home, had her home, and I live here now. But I did, I went to Synergy, a place for mom, and I got a nurse or someone to come in. It was still very costly, but it allowed me to work a few hours a day and then come back home and take care of my mother. And even with relatives, I've offered, and I've done that with my relatives as well, only because I've seen the care that a lot of the nursing homes give. I've heard the horror stories, and it wasn't, for me, it was not an option to place any of my loved ones in a nursing home. And that's just, I'm not bashing any of them. I'm not talking about any of them, but you hear the horror stories. In this day and time with COVID, with the climate the way it is, again, I am not happy that my parents, because both my mom and dad are not here, but I am pleased that they are not living in this day and time, because I don't think that they would have understood that you can't go out. They would not have understood the rules and the severity of COVID-19. Now, in terms of, I'm sorry?
The no visitors, I think, is a much worse thing, that they can't have anybody that they know come and console them.
Right.
That's really horrible. And you're held prison.
Well,
that's the
well,
worst
and
thing.
then you have those that are independent. And for those that are independent, who, like my mother and my father, who's used to the idea of getting up and going where they want, or living the life that they have, or it's this day, this time, this climate would not have worked for them. It just would not have. And so I'm not happy that she's not here, but I'm happy that she didn't have to live through the time that we're living through right now. In terms of funding, I do a lot of private funding, and let me tell you why. I've worked in this industry for over 30 years. The assisted living is a new part of what I do. However, private funding allows me to take care of the people the way that they should be taken care of. The rules are so relaxed in terms of what I can do, what I should do, how I run my programs, where the money is spent, how it is spent. I choose to do that because I am faith-based, and a lot of the funds, a lot of the funding, even though they're for charities, I'm nonprofit, I'm a not-for-profit nonprofit, a lot of the funds are governed by what someone thinks should happen. And I just couldn't run a program like that. I've never done that. So for me, private funding is the ultimate way to run a federally funded program, and the federal funds, if you must take them, use them as a supplement to what you're already doing. It just would not allow me to mix communities, immigrants and fosters. The rules are so defined, and I had to keep changing my proposal, if you will. With changing my proposals, it limited me to the kind of person or the resources that I could give them. So for me, I kind of apply for government funding, and I receive a lot of it, but private funding is what I use to support my program, aside of my own funds. Now, that might not be a good thing, and it might be a good thing, but I've had a great success story rate of clients that have succeeded. The youth, they benefit from the program. Private funding is just what I've always used. It's been offered. As an example, I think I shared with, I don't know if I shared it with Ms. Brown or not, but a few days ago, there was a company out of India, a youth company, a youth program. They're based here. They're based in India. However, they have branches all over the United States. And I received a call based on just, contact and my Facebook page, on my website. And they called and said, we want to give you money for food for your organization. And I should say also, I house sex trafficked young ladies as well that are former foster youth. And when they did that, I said, okay, great. I'm used to people donating. I get a lot of fun. So anyway, they forwarded me a check for $10,000. One of the young ladies live here in Sugar Land, and she said, in addition to that, I want to give you $700. So I get things like that. Sean Carter Foundation, which is Beyonce's husband's, Jay-Z, as we know him, he supports my program. I do a lot of private funding. I get funded by churches and things like that. Even with our seniors, I actually was asked to do a senior program, open a senior program by the state, and it was to house women who are a ward of the state, because there are not a lot of housing facilities for those ladies. So it took me a minute. My mom passed in 2014. So it took me a minute only because of the passion I have for our senior community. And if someone in that facility, and I, again, visit a lot of them, if someone in that facility abused that senior person, it would be very difficult for me to live with myself. However, visiting the senior facilities that I visited, there was such a great need for me to do it, and do it to the extent of me giving that person the life that I felt like they deserved, which means prayer, just activities for them to keep them flourishing, and make sure they have their medication. I own a pharmacy, so I provide medication for assisted living facilities. I provide medication for seniors that are in daycares. And the reason I did that is because I was asked, or someone made a point of saying, we have to decide whether we want to pay for our medication or pay our light bills or buy food. As a pharmacy, everyone knows the amount of markup that's on that medication. So for me to offer services, and my pharmacy is not a charity or 501c3, but it did not take much for me to say, I will provide the medication based on what your insurance pay, and you can take that money and pay your house note, pay your bills, buy your food.
Can I ask a question, Ms. Brown?
Yes, sir.
So are your assisted living facilities, are they 501c? Are they private? Are they nonprofit? How did you arrange those, set those up? And you say you do not take a lot of government funding, but you take some. So how does that work up? How does that work?
If in fact, sometimes the government, as the foster care, aftercare system, when I began housing the youth, there's a point when their funding ends. So you might have a kid the system has run out of funds, or their funds begin months later. So you have a period of time when there are no funds for you. I've received as little as $150. I've received as much as $450, because I am not, the SEAL program just began a few years ago. However, when I began my program, for the kids that have aged out of care, there was what, $5,000, I'm thinking, for those students. There were no funds for them in aftercare, if that's what you want to call it. They aged out, they were given a certain amount of money and a trash bag, and they exited that foster home. So all of the programs that began after my program was in existence for many years. So even though those programs now exist, I am still not a contractor through SEAL. So if, for me, my philosophy is, if I have a complex, I had 40 kids at one point, and if one person eat, everyone will eat. You know, it's just that. However, we had churches in the community that supported us. I leased an apartment complex. I lease houses now in the city of Houston, and I support those youth. There are kids that do not want to return to care because of their experience in care. And call it what it is just that, okay? So if that kid comes to me right now, I don't have room. We're building a community for that. But again, I am funded by private funding. A lot of the apartment complexes are facilities that I lease. I lease them using my own funds. Whatever I need is supplemented by donations. I have churches in the area that support us, Wheeler, Good Hope, St. Luke, to name a few, St. Paul Methodist, United Methodist. You know, because I am faith-based, there are organizations like HillCorp that fund faith-based organizations. In terms of the senior assisted living facilities, again, I was asked to house them inside the city of Houston, the city limits. A few years ago, during the administration under Parker, they began to have boarding houses registered. So in an effort to house them in the city of Houston, you have to register with the city of Houston as a boarding house. And again, mine is an independent living facility. So there's a difference. However, in the county, those restrictions are not there. So, you know, you accept the funds the way that you accept them. If there are no funds, when a child turns 17 or 18 and decides not to return to care, there are no funds for that child. So either I accept them or I find placement for them. You know, I just won't be limited to a certain degree with a youth wanting to receive a post-secondary education or receive some type of training so they can transition through life normally. I refuse to follow those rules. So for me, I'm a little bit different.
You're accepting people without funding?
Say again, sir?
If I have
accepting people without funding?
But I have private funding, so there's a difference. I'm not accepting the funding from the state yet. I'm getting to that point. Okay. But at this point, there are programs that will provide for the youth without funding from the state of Texas. I don't have a grant with CPS or Texas Department of Family and Protective Services, but that was by design at first. And even now, it's still by design because there are kids that need more assistance than not. There are those kids that exit foster care that don't want to return to care or be a part of the extended care. So either we do it the way I do it, or we find a creative way to do it, or they are a part of my other programs. And that's sex trafficked youth, that's the incarcerated youth, or, you know, that's the youth that are on drugs. So either we assist them with private funding, we sign up for the government funding, and we cannot, you know, I know there's DARS, there's MHMRA that provide a few funds. I've done those programs as well. I've had kids to be given to me by the penal system. Again, if those kids do not fit in one of those programs, I won't turn them away. The objective is to keep them out of the penal system, keep them from becoming trafficked, and a lot of them are not trafficked because they're wanting to become trafficked. They're having sex as a tool of survival. And from that, you have someone that traffics them, that they're caught up, or they're told that we'll offer you a place to stay for XYZ. And you know, they're caught up, or they're in the penal system. They commit a petty crime to go to the system in order to have a place to live. Or that kid will, they call it a crazy check, pretend that they are mentally ill so that they can get a check. So my program, I won't turn a kid away, but my program is directed towards that kid that, again, is seeking a post-secondary education. In terms of the assisted living or independent living, there's a difference in what I do.
What is the difference?
The independent living are, again, I house the adults who can live independently on medication. So their medication is monitored. but they can cook for themselves. You know, we assist them with those things. I'm sorry, they live independently, but we still monitor the things that they do. We have activities for them. We take them to a daycare, if you will, where they can, you know, play bingo or have some form of life other than just, you know, living in a facility where they're pretty much, we have the non-ambulatory clients. So we have clients that can still move around. I'm sorry, ambulatory, that can still move around, but their illnesses are controlled by medication. As long as they're on those meds, their lives are not normal, but pretty normal.
Yes, ma'am. Miss Tiffany, what do you see are the biggest limitations, restrictions, difficulties within the independent living or assisted living industry? Me, just starting out, wishing to become involved and invest my money, my energy. What are those biggest limitations, restrictions, and difficulties that may come about?
So, so restrictions and limitations for somebody who's new coming into the industry is what you're asking?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So what I have found, so I've worked in the industry for 9 years in corporate, right? For these bigger companies, and coming out, I have found a whole group of people who are wanting to open up their own senior living community or assisted living. So what I have found is the restrictions is that lack of information that's readily available to walk them through the steps. It's there, but where to find it, I'm finding is really difficult for people, even though we have Google University. But people just don't, I don't know if they don't know how to look it up or whatever have you. But that, what you're talking about, someone who, is so much, I think we talked about this before, there's a lot of different components and you don't know, step one is to do this. Step two is to do that. So I have even actually found on one of my groups I belong to, someone got a house, made it beautiful, got furniture, and did the video to show it. It's a 2-story home with all the bedrooms upstairs. It is, all the furniture is plush, no side chairs for help to get up. Like, they don't know these little things, that's education that's going to help that person who lives with them. And what it actually does is cause liability for them as an owner later on.
So one thing you're saying is a 2-story home is not necessarily a good thing for trying to have an assisted living environment because of the stairs and so forth.
Oh yeah, because the fire codes and something happens. I mean, it's a liability. We just had that in Florida. An unlicensed assisted living had a fire and it was a fatality. You know, so the thing is people don't understand. What I'm seeing right now is a lot of people want to get into it for the money sake of it, because of the baby boomers and stuff like that. And they're looking at, I can have a house and charge $2,000, put 2 people in 1 bedroom and make all this money. And they don't understand the business of it. So they're looking at only that portion, but the staffing, the food, like during this time in COVID, a lot of the smaller homes, you have to come out of your money to get the PPE. You know, you have to come out of your money for the extra, all the extra things that is going on when your staff has to do a 14-day quarantine and can't come to work. Now you have to hire agency to come in. It's a business. And what I feel is that people are not taking the time to learn the business. They're looking at the real estate investment, which is not only with the small ones. That's the problem I saw also in corporate. So you have Wall Street, Ritz, real estate investment companies who are buying and building these big assisted livings without understanding the business of it. They just hire a senior management company to manage them, but then they're changing them every 2 years because they're not getting the fast return on the money because it's Wall Street and we're looking for it every quarter. And it doesn't work like that. And so that is what I am seeing, is that people lack there lacks a centralized system, and that's what I'm really trying to build with my new website, is that if you're whatever state, you can go on and there's an attachment where you can see the regs from that particular state. Here's classes that you can have on building culture or how to hire, like those ideas of how to run your business in senior living is what I'm trying to put together, so that some people, there's coaches and stuff like that, which is great, you know, but just being able to click and say, this is where it is, and being able to pull that down.
What's the name of your website?
It's tiffanyhillallen.com. It's not up. It's up, but I'm in the process of rebranding and changing it based on the information that I have seen over the last 3-4 months.
Yes, ma'am. I totally understand.
Yeah.
We're getting ready to wind up. Miss Cassandra, can you share whatever you would like to share on this particular subject as we wind down?
Sorry.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate a lot of what Miss Tiffany was talking about because I know your passion is mental health management. And when she made reference to the point of the seniors, you know, taking the antidepressants and the anti-anxiety meds, that's actually what made me go back to school as a nurse and get a master's in psychotherapy. Because as I was engaging as a case manager, I was dealing more with those types of issues than the actual healthcare issues that I was there to actually deal with. It's a major issue when, just like she mentioned, when patients or individuals, period, are cognitively impaired. They have a level of dementia or Alzheimer's where you can't explain to them what's going on. Just as the other guest mentioned, you know, that her parents would not have been able to understand the dynamic. My aunt actually is in a facility that's a nursing home. They are not able to leave out of their rooms at all. Thank God she's cognitive to where she knows what's going on. But when my grandfather was sick with a stroke and he had to be in a facility for about 2 or 3 months, I had to pay Mr. Baruti $1,000 a week cash just for sitters to be with him 24/7, because as a nurse, I didn't try, especially when he couldn't talk and he was paralyzed. And because my aunt would not allow us to stay with him because of a lot of other craziness, and she had power of attorney, she would only allow us to visit him for 30 minutes a day. So I had to pay somebody on top of a $6,000 bill. We literally were paying about $10,000 cash per month to house him when he could have been at home, where we could have taken care of him. Thank God my family was very wealthy, and being a African-American family, that was rare that you would have the kind of cash that we had to be able to do that until he passed away. You know, most families, you can't pay $10,000, $11,000 a month to take care of anybody, let alone take care of yourself. So we were blessed in that, but I had to pay for a nurse to stay with him. And it wasn't exactly 24, it was 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. And and that by itself was about $1,000 a week. So when you're dealing with, when someone asks the question, what do people do that don't have the funding? The sad thing, reality, Medicare only pays for 100 days. After that 100 days, you better have some money, some family, something. And it's very, very sad as a case manager with me having to deal with this. Medicaid beds are who would have been available if you don't have the money. But then the catch-22 with that is if you don't qualify for Medicaid. If you make $1 over, I think is what, you don't even qualify for Medicaid. So now you have nobody unless you have long-term care insurance. How many Black families do you know that had long-term care insurance that could pay for it? Long-term care insurance per year is about $2,000 to $4,000 a year per person. Now that will pay for your long-term care, but how many seniors can afford? The premium by itself may be anywhere from $200 to $500 or $600 per month. That's only on long-term care insurance. Okay, so my clients as a nurse, most of my clients were very wealthy, and most of my clients were white and had that. Most Black African-American families have never even heard of it, let alone can they afford it. They don't even have basic life insurance. My family owned the largest African-American owned funeral home in the state of Texas for over 50 years. So we had to bury tons of people for free because we were not gonna not bury you because you didn't have money, you know. So the thing of it was, which is why God blessed us, we were a very wealthy family because we were number one by a long shot, and God always provided, okay? But most people don't have the resources, you know. It's just a sad thing. You can get emergency Medicaid under certain circumstances, but then your facilities don't want Medicaid beds because Medicaid beds don't pay them any money.
Right.
So even if you have Medicaid, okay, you may have a facility that may have, we'll say 100-bed facility that may have 10 Medicaid beds, okay? Us as case manager, if you're working, when I was in case management, if I'm a discharge planner in a hospital, I'm snatching those beds up as soon as one comes available, I'm snatching that Medicaid bed because I have a patient I'm trying to place out of my facility. So that means his mother or his aunt who needs, even if she qualified for Medicaid, is probably not going to get the bed anyway because I already have a relationship with the facility that they're going to give that one commodity of a Medicaid bed. They're going to give that bed to me. Right. So it's so many dynamics that you are dealing with. Everything at the end of the day comes down to a money game, you know, at the end of the day. And if you cannot afford it, because Medicare, at the end of that 100 days, they are done. You know, they're done, and you better have something. So I applaud the one, and I can't see her name on here, who was able to keep her parents at home. But some people are just not able to. It's not that they want to. They literally cannot do it for whatever reason. They can't afford not to only work a few. I know registered nurses and physicians and people like that have to work. They can't have their family member at home or whatever the case may be. So that's a blessing. My aunt prevented us. I'm a nurse. We very well could have taken care of my grandfather. She used her power of attorney to prevent us from being able to bring him home because she was just bitter at the fact that he had adopted us and felt like we got money that belonged to her, which was completely ignorant on so many different levels. But we were, thank God, able to pay somebody to be with him to make sure he was never mistreated or abused. Now, what if it was today, like Mr. McReynolds said, his aunt at 103, would be laying up with nobody to advocate for her. Do you know how many times they bring a tray? They did this even in a regular acute care hospital. They know this patient cannot feed themselves or eat. They will literally come and set that tray next to that bed, know the patient can't eat or whatever, and come back and pick the tray up. The patient never got fed, never ate any food, and picked the tray up and kept going. And
Excuse me, I have to butt in right here because I saw that so much and it hurt my heart to see people not being fed in the nursing home.
Exactly. They
So
did
that's
it
why
all.
I'm
You
glad
have
she's
no
there.
idea.
Yeah.
When he made the statement, I'm glad he wasn't elated. He know how his aunt would have been treated. And I'm gonna tell you another dynamic to that. Because of the economics of it, you have people that went into nursing school or went into being MAs or what we call medical assistants or whatever, so that they can have a job. They do not have a heart to service people. Right. And when you don't have a heart to service people, you hate your job. That's number one. Nursing is a job that you have to love from your heart. You have to have a heart for the people. If it's just a job to you, you would be miserable and you will make everybody around you miserable. And this is what I see even when I'm dealing with even people that's working in a corporate environment with me. Right. They hate it. So they see that never would have happened when I was on the floor, because I did everything the aide was supposed to do. Now they do not care. They will leave that tray untouched, won't even tell somebody this person has not eaten. They will come and pick that tray up, put it back on the cart, and you don't know, because that patient may not be able to talk to you, that they have had no food, no water. This is why they're full of bed sores. This is why they're dehydrated and full of infections that you can't take care of. That's a whole conversation in and of itself.
Yes, ma'am. That sure is a whole conversation in and of itself. I will say this: in every area, in every work profession, if you do not love it, in education, the special education, if you do not have an empathy and a connection with those children, you will treat them bad. You will do bad things in that industry also. And especially if you believe people are unaware, won't see what you're doing. You know, my dad went to hospice, of course, at the end of his life. My dad was 91. My mother is 91 now. And she's still at home. And we have home health care that comes in. And there was a person of the same faith, my mother's Jehovah's Witness. She probably won't like me saying this, but of course, she wanted to cut for this lady that was of the same faith and wanted her to, you know, be the person that was there. But this particular person was talking bad and you know, treating her bad. And, you know, finally, you know, I objected all the time, but my mother overruled me and said, no, I want her to be here. But finally it got to the point where my mother finally had to admit, okay, even though you're of the same faith as me, you can't be here because you're abusive and you're ugly. And that's what it comes down to. Those people who have a care and a love for our family members, we have to look after them and make sure that things are okay. This is going to wind up our show. I want everybody to be able to share their last statement and give a point of reference as to how we can contact you. This is the Sourceseeker Hour Online. I'm your host, Baruti Carl Alexander. I thank everybody for joining us. Miss Tiffany, please share a point of reference and give a final statement as to the assisted living environment and maybe the future or the reality.
Okay, thank you very much for actually having this. Great. I love the panel. All of you guys rock on all of this you're doing. I just am so excited to be involved with you guys and to share this platform with you. One thing I did want to, if this is how I use my time, is there's something when it comes to senior living, even care at home, a lot of people don't realize that there is money through the VA, through aid and dependents pension fund if they are a wartime veteran or a widow of a wartime veteran. So I just want to throw that out there because a lot of people do not take advantage of that or even know about it.
Right.
And so I want to make sure that that people can go on to the VA, call it aid and attendance pension, to see what the rules are to qualify. And it will give you additional monies up to a little over $2,000 for the veteran and a little bit over $1,300 for the spouse or the widow of a veteran who served during wartime, and what that looks like and what wars are eligible. So I did want to say that because of the question the other gentleman had about paying for it. It is one of my, you know, when I looked at the thing for nursing homes, only 24% of African Americans are in nursing homes and 13% in residential care homes or assisted living. So as you can see, we don't make up a big portion of that, and a lot of it is because of the income disparity. Is not affordable housing for seniors in the assisted living industry and space, which has been talked about in the industry. And so there are some very creative ideas, like a friend of mine has care pods in North Carolina, where she's doing an assisted living model, but the person stay at home, but she has the people coming through as an assisted living model, paying monthly. So there's different things like that that is on the horizon. So that's how I see it. That's where the growth of the industry is in the 55 plus realm, because people who are aging don't really want to go into independent living. So that's the area where people are now starting out instead of going straight into independent. But for those people like us who look like us, the key is financial education and literacy early, preparing, like the nurse said about with long-term care insurance, if you can afford it, or try and figure that out, or buying a house, like the other lady said, so you can have some funding when it comes time, and to really search out those places. A lot of the things I think you guys were talking about was more nursing home, and it sounded more nursing home related situations than assisted living per se, but you have to advocate. No matter where your mother or father is, be an advocate, be there, be present, check on them, no matter where they are. So with that, people can reach me at tiffanyhillallen.com is the website. I have a blog that I'm also, I'm reformatting everything because I kind of set out during this time because my industry, you know, is going all crazy with everything at COVID, but is Champions of Change Corner. And I also have a podcast, Champions of Change Corner.
Thank you, Ms. Tiffany. I appreciate you for joining us and sharing everything there from Jacksonville, Florida. Thank you very much. Cassandra, can you chime in and let people know how they can reach you?
Sure. My mental health management entity is called the Victoria Barnes Mental Health and Wellness Center. It's named after my grandmother. And the reason why I did mental health and wellness is to bridge the gap between my nursing and my mental health background. And so, but I will tell, just like Miss Tiffany said, do your homework. Do your homework. It can't be about, if you want to go into this industry about the money, it has to be about caring for people. I've seen people, just like someone said, that opened homes, didn't understand the codes, didn't understand the deed restrictions for their neighborhood, whether or not they could actually run a business there or not, invested a lot of money, and things didn't work out. So do your homework, educate yourself, and if you seek to provide a service, do it from the bottom of your heart first. It's a heart thing. When you're dealing with people, it is a heart matter. And so I'll leave it at that.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much. Ms. Alma, thank you for joining us. Can you share with people how they can have a reference to you if they want to ask more information?
You can go to my website. It's littleaudreysafeplacefoundation.com, and there's an area that says apply or comment. It's a blog as well. Or you can call that my organization, and again, Little Audrey Safe Place Foundation, and the number is 281, and I'll give you the number, 501-3807. what I'll leave you with is anytime you're taking care of someone that does not belong to you and that does belong to you, if you don't have a heart to do it, it becomes a job. If that job is not paying enough, or if it's taking up too much of your time, then that job is now, it's becoming a nuisance to your way of life.
Yeah.
If you cannot do it, find a place that will do it and will do it to the best of their ability, and definitely check on them, be it child, adult, mentally ill, just period. Because a lot of times, again, this is all about money for a lot of people, even the foster care system. It's about how much money I can make on that particular bed. Period.
Yes, ma'am. I understand. Thank you so much, Miss Alma, for joining us and sharing all the great information that you shared. We appreciate it very much. You know, this has been a big subject, a whole lot of different aspects. I did not even realize how many different aspects assisted living, independent living, across the board covers. So I'm gonna have to get more specific and ask more questions and bring about another show. Vion, take us out and let us know, Dr. Vion, where we can reach you. This is the Sourceseeker Hour, online, most powerful show on the internet. Dr. Vion, take us out.
Basically, you can get me at Facebook on Tour de Hood on Facebook. That's real simple. But if you have people out there that need care, give your heart, as they said, because if it was you, you would want somebody to care for you. So do unto others as you would have them do unto you, please. That's
a powerful word for us to say goodbye on. Everybody, thank you very much. I'll be back in touch. This is the Sourceseeker Hour Online. I'm your host, Rudy Carl Alexander. Thank you very much. Have a good day. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.